1. New home. Viktor Yarovoy was the kind of person who wears fatigue on his face like a mask. After a divorce and a nervous breakdown, he decided to get as far away from his former self as possible. Fate threw him into a tiny town called Malaya Shapovka, a lost place where the streets died out in the evenings and the wind carried last year's leaves across the asphalt. Viktor was offered a teaching position in the local school, and to it an apartment in an old house nearby. The apartment was on the 4th floor, overlooking a dingy courtyard. Everything was shabby, but not intimidating, until he heard that another teacher, Pyotr Nevzorov, used to live in this apartment and had simply disappeared, without a trace. 2. The first nights. At first, Viktor had the usual dreams, strange, confusing dreams, like everyone else's. But then he appeared, the man in the dark. He stood in the corner of the bedroom, as still as a statue, with his head tilted slightly to the side. No face was visible, only dark hollows where his eyes should be, and a wide, unnatural smile. Each night the figure grew closer. When Viktor awoke, he would find thin, claw-like scratches on the floor. One day he found them even on the windowsill. 3. Fear grows. He began to talk to his colleagues about it. An elderly history teacher, looking out the window, said, "Don't sleep with the window open, and never go to sleep if you feel someone is in the room." "Why?" he asked. "Because then he won't come in your sleep." She didn't say who, but there was real concern in her gaze. 4. Research. Viktor started looking for information. In the archives of the local library he found a note. The teacher disappeared, leaving traces of a struggle in the apartment. The windows and doors are locked from the inside. He learned that Pyotr Nevzorov suffered from insomnia, and a few days before his disappearance had spoken of a man in a dream who wants to come out. Viktor began recording himself on a tape recorder at night. In the morning, he would listen to himself stirring and moaning in his sleep. But on the 5th night, at 3:17, the recording hissed, and quietly, barely audible, someone whispered, "Go to sleep." 5. Closer and closer. Now the figure was coming to life. It stood in the mirror when Viktor was brushing his teeth. She was reflected in the window as he drank tea. She stood behind him when he closed his eyes. He could feel the room growing cold. It was as if time was thickening like sour milk. Neighbors began to shun him. The children at school were frightened of Viktor, saying he had a strange shadow. 6. Last night. That night he already knew he couldn't fall asleep. He drank coffee, ate sugar, watched TV at full volume. But at 3 in the morning, his eyes still started to slip shut. The last thing he saw was a shadow sliding across the floor. He woke up, but not in his apartment. Everything felt like reality, but distorted. The windows led into endless darkness. "You're asleep. He's here." And in the center of the room stood a figure. Close. She held out her hand. His body didn't move. Only a voice whispered in his head, "I was hungry. Thank you for coming on your own." 7. Disappearance. The next day Viktor's apartment was empty. A cup of coffee on the table, not finished. On the wall was a thin, as if scratched out with fingernails, "He's had enough." For now. A week later, a new teacher came in, a young girl. In the evening she was sorting out her things and heard the dictaphone lying in her desk drawer turn on by itself, and whispered, "Go to sleep." 1. The house that waited. Once upon a time there was a girl named Emma who returned to her parents' abandoned house on the outskirts of an old town lost among the hills and pine forest. The town was called Tarlo, and it was no longer on the maps. The house stood as if holding its breath. The windows were cloudy, like the eyes of an old man who had seen too much. The door opened with a creak like a groan and let Emma in like a lost daughter. Inside smelled of dust, memories, and something else. Damp earth, old books, and meat. She'd come for answers. After all, her parents had disappeared 10 years ago, and no one in Tarlo wanted to talk about it. The locals looked at her like she was a ghost. One old man outside the store even whispered, "This house won't let go. It collects." Emma didn't pay much attention. Not yet. Then. 2. The room that wasn't. The first night Emma didn't sleep well. Something rustled behind the wall, and the mirrors in the house dimmed as if someone had breathed on them from inside. In the morning, she found something strange, gray dust on her pillow. She wiped it away with her hand, and the dust disappeared, as if it had been absorbed into her skin. Exploring the house, she found a ladder to the attic. It hadn't been there before, or had it been? The memory tangled like old threads. In the attic was a room as if carved out of another time, a rocking chair, a dollhouse, a gramophone with a crackling record, and an old leather-bound diary. It lay in the dust, but it opened easily. On the first page was her name. On the second, words she definitely didn't write. "He's under the skin. He's waiting for you to be alone again." 3. Whispers in the walls. During the night, the walls came alive. Emma could hear someone whispering in her ear, even though no one was in the room. The whispers spoke strange words, old, extinct words. Sometimes it just moaned, like a caged animal. She opened the diary again. New lines appeared there. "Don't open the window. He's in the wind. He's in the mirror. Don't look." There was a handprint on the bathroom mirror, too big to be human. Emma left the house and drove into town. The old librarian fell out of his chair when he saw her. "You're like 2 peas in a pod," he whispered. "Who?" "Evelyn, the one who lived in this house 100 years ago. She disappeared, too. And before that, her face dried up like parchment, as if she'd been sucked dry." 4. The story of the dust-collecting spirit. According to old records, this house was built on the site of an ancient temple. There, a creature named Mirag was worshipped. He was called He Who Lives Between the Cracks. He doesn't growl. He whispers. He doesn't eat flesh. He drinks memories, feelings, fears. They said the Mirag gets under your skin. First you hear it, then you see him, and then he speaks in your voice, and then you disappear. Emma realized that her parents hadn't left. They stayed. They just, dissolved. Their shadows now lived in the mirrors, their whispers in the crevices of the floor. 5. It comes alive when you remember. Emma decided to leave home, but the closer the road got, the stronger the voices became. Her feet were sticking into the ground. The windows were slamming as if in protest. Dust was appearing on her body, more and more. In the mirror in the hallway, she saw her reflection, but it was smiling while she cried, and its skin was thinner, more transparent. Something was moving beneath it. "Not you now, me. Welcome home," the mirror whispered. And Emma screamed. The world disappeared in a gray swirl, as if the house had breathed her inside. 6. The last page. Now the house is quiet again. In the attic is the diary. On the last page is a new entry. "Welcome, Emma. You are part of the house now. You are the whispers. You are the dust. And tomorrow the next one will come. And if you ever find yourself in Thurlow and pass an old house with dim windows, don't look in them. And certainly don't open the door. Because the house is still hungry."